constant news about mosques selling literature calling for the overthrow of British democracy, constant news about mosques calling for the murder of British Jews and homosexuals, the constant news about the subjugation of the British people and the imposition of a global Islamic caliphate. And this is today. What are we going to see in the future when the 18 to 40-year-old demographic is the one that's actually in power? We only have to look around the world to see the answer, and let me take just one example of Lebanon. Lebanon used to be a majority Christian country, but as the Islamic demographic grew, so did their demand for control. And this triggered in 1975 a 15-year religious civil war, which killed 10% of the population, injured 33%, half of them with lifelong disabilities, and the entire Christian leadership was either jailed, exiled, or murdered. This is probably Britain's future. Britain's security services won't be able to hold back Islamic terrorist attacks forever, and when the next one gets through, I fully expect to see indigenous British hotheads somewhere take revenge by going out and murdering a Muslim somewhere in Britain, or by torching a mosque, and when that happens, this whole tit-for-tat atrocity starts happening. And this is going to get worse and progressively more vicious before the entire country goes the way of the Lebanon, or more recently Yugoslavia, which of course fractured along racial, religious and tribal lines. And this view of future Armageddon will be sneered at again by the liberal left, who continue to bombard us with the lie that Islam is a religion of peace. But of course Islam is not and never has been a religion of peace. Muhammad was a warlord, and a very successful warlord at that, and Islam is a political, social and structural order of supremacy and imperialism. Islam in its most fundamental form is Nazism, in its desire for global supremacy, women fit only for the kitchen, the bedroom, the place of prayer, Jews and homosexuals to be murdered, and all those not of the faith to live their lives as second-class citizens. In fact, Islam is even worse than Nazism. Not even the most vicious of Nazis ever suggested it was permissible to bury an adulterous woman up to her neck in sand, to phone up the cousins and the nephews and the brothers, and to come round and slowly and methodically stone her to death. So what can we do about this in Britain? Even talking about it contravenes all the various new hate laws, which will now send you to prison. And the government and the media are out to demonise anybody who dares to raise the subject. And in the interest of short-term election cycles, the government is quite happy to sweep all of our potential catastrophes under the table simply because they operate on 4-year cycles and nothing longer. But it's too important to ignore, because the very lives of our children are dependent upon what we do today. And there's very little on the horizon, to actually change where we're going. The liberal left are very happy with mass immigration, because mass immigration provides them with mass votes. The Conservatives simply refuse to talk about it, or if they do, it's only to suggest that Islamic Turkey should join the European Union. And the one party that will talk about it, the British National Party, has quite rightly been sidelined in the eyes of decent British people, because they have a very bad history of genuine racial bigotry, and their leader is a Holocaust denier. So this leaves just one party in Britain at the moment that could possibly do something about it, which is the British Freedom Party, which I'm very proud to say I'm the chairman of. And we want to stop any further third world mass immigration, and we want to stop the Islamization of Britain. And we can do this by calling a halt to the building of any more mosques, by deporting all foreign-born terrorists and criminals, by refusing welfare payments to polygamous Muslims with large families, by closing down mosques found preaching violence and sedition, and by jailing imams who think it's all right to call for the murder of Jews and homosexuals. In short, to make it difficult for Muslims who wish us harm in Britain to remain living in our country. And I know it all sounds terribly unpleasant, but unless we do something like this, we are probably heading for a civil war that will make the breakup of Yugoslavia pale into insignificance. And we didn't make those colossal sacrifices between 1939 to 1945 in order, just a few decades later, to very meekly and abjectly surrender to a totalitarian ideology redolent of Islam itself. Now, we're not going to allow a 7th century doctrine of religious imperialism excuse me, and who view our innate sense of decency, morality and generosity simply as signs of Western weaknesses which they can seize and use against us. We're not going to allow Islam to take their slow, steady, incremental control of Great Britain without at least putting up some sort of resistance. And I hope, I really desperately hope that we're not too far gone yet, even if your Mark Stein has already written us off. But I'm going to close now by just asking that Canadians keep a close eye on what's happening in Europe, and particularly in Britain, and to call a halt today, right now, immediately, to any further expansion of Islamic ideology and demographic growth in Canada. Don't make the same mistakes that Britain has done, and you can see this. Now, I'm going to fight for Britain. I'm prepared to lay down my life for Britain, but there's no guarantee that we're going to win this. There's no guarantee that Europe's going to win this. And if we go, and if North America goes shortly thereafter, then this is the illusion of permanency. Now, this has happened. Civilizations end. And we're looking at that situation right now. And if Western civilization goes, this is one of the kindest, most humane, most decent civilizations the world has ever known. And it's going to be replaced with Islam, the most barbaric, illiberal, totalitarian, pathologically cruel regime the world has ever seen. So I'm just going to say to you, please, Canada, look at what's happened to Europe, look at what's happened to Britain, and don't let it happen to you. Thank you.